Hi everyone, my name is Joe Lagilia, and on this episode of Not Your Average Joe, we're talking with Tom Hernandez, Director of Community Relations for District 202. Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Joe, powered by Mortgage Message. My name is Joe Lagilia, and today I'm joined with Tom Hernandez, Director of Community Relations for District 202. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here.
Absolutely. So, Tom, so many people within the community know exactly who you are, but for the very small percentage who are watching, please take a few minutes and explain who you are and what you do.
Sure. Well, unofficially, I'm that voice on the phone that it makes my wife nuts. We can't go anywhere without somebody going, "You're that guy. You call me all the time." But officially, I'm the Director of Community Relations for District 202. So my role is to kind of be the connection point, the liaison to the entire district. I am the spokesperson for the district, along with the superintendent, obviously, but most of the time he and I work together and then defers to me for speaking to the public. I work with the media. I work with our families. I was talking on the way over. On the way over here, which is about a 3-minute drive, 2 different family issues that I helped try to resolve. So that's kind of my function, is to be that person in a very, very large bureaucratic system that could very easily be nameless and faceless, so that people can reach out and talk to somebody. So a lot of my work is to kind of make sure they get to the right person. As an example, in the 2 situations I mentioned, Dad, you have to call the school, right? You have to talk, like that. So that's a lot of what I do, but to just kind of be the one that people can call and come to.
Wonderful. Yeah, I want to share with you to start the interview how we met in 2018 at the Plainfield Gala.
Right.
You were the opening MC for the event at Bolingbrook Golf Club. And I remember at the time my children were still 3 and not even 1 years old yet, and you got up and you said, "Good evening, everyone. This is Tom Hernandez," and the entire crowd erupted in laughter. And I said to the person next to me at the table, I said, "Why is everyone laughing?" And they said, "Well, because that's his signature opening line."
That's my my shtick.
Yeah, and it was wonderful because now my daughter just entered 1st grade at Lincoln in District 202. Shout out to Mr. Hartman.
Yes.
And we're gonna talk about, just as you said, the intricacies of what's behind this. But I think a good way to open up the interview, as you mentioned, is looking back over this incredible last 2 years, and I'll say as a starting point for me, my approach to leadership is always to extend grace first, because of the amount of heaviness that it involves to be in a leadership position such as yours. Looking back at the last 2 years, kind of talk about some of those challenging points, that unprecedented times you've had to overcome.
Gosh, thank you. And I tell you, you used the right word, grace, which is a conscious choice that we make to extend kindness or to extend empathy to people. And just like a lot of things, like prayer and everything else, it kind of works both ways. This has been, to call it unprecedented is almost a silly at this point. To try to categorize what this last 20 months has been. We literally, in February of 2020, everything was cooking along just great. And, a couple of weeks later, we got word about this thing that nobody had really heard of, this virus. And remember, the governor, at first it was just going to be a week, then it was just going to be a month. And here we are, and we went through the process of, like all school districts, had to kind of create a remote learning process out of thin air. Some of our peer districts had already been kind of moving in that direction by buying Chromebooks for other kids. Well, we were too, but we're doing it much more slowly because we were focusing more on professional development. Our goal at that time was to make sure that our teachers knew how to use technology in the classroom. We weren't thinking about emergencies or crises. We were thinking long term. And to make sure that your average 12-year-old didn't know more about technology than his or her teacher, right? And then in a matter of days and weeks, we ended up having to rob Peter to pay Paul. We took computers from the high school to get them down to the younger kids, kind of in an interim period. Then we, over the summer, spent $7 million on computers for 17,000 computers. Because remember, we're the 5th biggest district in Illinois. And I say this often, trying to be as kind about it as possible. For all those people who want to compare us to other districts, well, Naperville did this and da-da-da. Nobody but the 4 of them who are bigger than us have any idea what our challenges are.
So true.
And size makes a huge, huge difference. So, fast forward, we made it through the first leg of that, and of course things looked like they were going to be coming back down in the summer, and then, like the sun coming up, the numbers started to get worse, and we started last school year with remote learning. Again, other districts did some other things. That's fine. Welcome to Illinois, where local authority is king, and 852 school districts, and quite frankly, very little guidance from the powers that be, and whatever guidance we got changed all the time. I mean, it seemed like every third day we were getting something different that said, oh, whatever you just did, now we've got to do the other. And it made it, and obviously not impossible, but I mean, it made it incredibly difficult to manage and administer and guide forward a system that is already difficult because of all the things that we. Public education is a wonderful thing. It's the most American, capital A, of all American institutions, because we take all comers. Every child has a right to be here, and we are legally and morally and ethically obligated to serve every single child. That in and of itself is a life's work, right? This is why, I mean, I know you're honoring me today as some sort of a community hero, but this is why everybody who is a teacher should be here talking to you. You want to talk community heroes, it's our teachers.
Amen.
And that's hard enough all by itself. Then you layer on top of it this craziness that we've had to deal with, which is, and I don't belittle, I mean, it is absolutely true. This pandemic, it's been nuts. So we started out in remote learning. Some of our neighboring districts did something different, but we were very conservative, and we stayed with whatever the guidance was. So we had a plan to bring kids back slowly in the fall, and we started to do that. And literally, the first group was about 200 of our highest special needs kids, because they needed the attention more than anybody. A week. They were in school a week, and we had to close school down, because if you recall that around Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving, we had a huge spike, which then lasted until January, until after Christmas. Then we started to bring kids back in a limited fashion, a couple half days. Then we, when the guidance loosened up a little bit, we brought them back for 5 half days. And then over the summer, here we go again. The numbers start to go down. The governor loosens up. Everybody's back to being restored. We're going to come back, and our board decided, masks would be optional, and we were moving in that direction. And then August 4th, the governor changes and imposes a mask mandate. And again, I don't disagree with any of that. They're dealing with the same issues we are, but at a higher level. But holy cats, man, when you're at the bottom of the hill, my granddaughter, my 3-year-old granddaughter, she says, "Holy cow, holy cow!" When you're at the bottom of the hill, and all of this just keeps raining down on top of you, and all you're trying to do is help children learn, be supported, have social opportunities for the older kids and the adolescents and the high schoolers. You've got enough on your plate.
Right.
Now, I always think about the guy, if you're old enough to remember the old Bozo show, the guy who spun plates on the sticks,
of course,
right?
Yes.
We already have 30 plates spinning, and then you put in 50 more plates.
Yeah.
It's been that kind of a thing.
Well, and I think I love the share, because I think it brings context to, as I mentioned, just us as a community giving leadership the opportunity to lead in this moment in history that no one has anything to base it off of. And I think, to your point, especially as a new parent myself of having a child in 202, and the people and parents who are going to see this, I think you hit it on the head when you talk about extending grace to the educators, to the leadership, and to give them an opportunity to navigate.
But it also works from our side too, and this is the part that sometimes gets lost in the conversation. Yes, of course, we're asking. We desperately need our parents to be our partners in this and to understand. It is also our job to understand and to keep in mind what this means to your average mom and dad. And for much of last year, asking parents to completely turn their lives around so that kids could be home and do remote learning was an unbelievable challenge. And we know that. We empathize. I know it sounds trite, I suppose, but to say that, but I mean, we get it. Yeah. You know, we are all, to varying degrees, parents, current parents, past parents, grandparents, you know, we understand what it means for mom and dad to have to do this. It's the magnitude of this cannot be overstated.
Absolutely.
So everybody has to give a little bit, you know.
Absolutely. We certainly understand the challenges, as you said, that could change tomorrow. There could not be more of an opportunity on the flip side of that to talk about some of the most rewarding moments over the last 20 months, and I'm sure there's a few you could share.
Oh, there are, and I tell you, I'll tell you just a very short story by way of illustration. I hope that if among the many things that will come out of this, and you know, there's got to be another side, right?
Amen.
There's got to be a line at some point where we go, phew, that's in our past, right? Hakuna Matata, the past is behind us. I think one of the things that has happened, especially early on, was a renewed, for some people a new, but a renewed, for most people, appreciation for what teachers do. I got news. They're not glorified babysitters.
That's right.
And I'm saying that with tongue out of cheek, okay? I mean, being very serious, not sarcastic or cynical, but there are some people who feel that way, and that's just unacceptable. And you know, when that became reality was when mom and dad had to be home helping their children to manage remote learning. You know, I had a dad, poor guy, just the nicest man. He's a high school father. And he called, and he just kind of went around the clock of all the different reasons why this was so frustrating and so hard and so difficult. And finally he got to his main point, which was, I'm not a teacher. I don't know how to do this stuff. And I went, yes, exactly. That's the point, you know. Right. So I think and I hope that there's a renewed appreciation for what it means to be a teacher. It's not simply showing up and, teaching, 3+3. I mean, the list of professional obligations, legal obligations, the politics involved, that kind of impose themselves on the average classroom is unbelievable. Yeah. The teacher, now I'm much older than you, but I mean, what we understood as teachers, that world doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
Teachers are under such incredible strain to be checking off 85 different boxes. And, all love to my friends in politics, but every time a politician thinks of something new, they seem to think that public school is the place to try this out. Mm-hmm. Okay, we only have so many hours in the day.
Right.
And again, then you factor on top of that 852 school districts. Everybody does it different. So it's really, I think that, I've heard those kinds of stories. This is so hard for us. It's so, trying to be able to find a way to go to work or take my kid or whatever. But gosh, Mrs. Jones, or thank goodness for Mr. Smith, and that's it.
Speaking from experience, I can tell you that your observation couldn't be more spot on.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, who's a nurse, and me being in the financial services industry, we had to take on that in 2020, and I got to tell you, we absolutely elevated our respect for the education, for educators. Mm-hmm. And I think, to your point, I think a lot of people did. You've been doing this in this role for many, many years. Mm-hmm. Certainly, and I think you touched on it briefly, and I want you to go a little bit farther into it. What was the way of doing things has changed fundamentally, and as you said, possibly forever, and we hope to have a behind us moment. But what are some of the things you've learned in your role through this moment in history?
Well, good and bad, right? I mean, the bad, sometimes, people let themselves get very frustrated and kind of point fingers, and that's human nature. We all do it. But they're pointing fingers at the wrong part of the conversation. 99% of what has happened over the last 20 months has been done to us, not by us. And that's a big, big difference. And again, that's where we ask grace from our families too, our parents and our taxpayers, to try to understand, your concerns, totally legitimate, 2 kids, right? And it's hard for you and your wife, she's a front line worker, and your dad, and you're trying, everybody's trying to work together. Now take that and multiply it by 25,000. That's our challenge, and it's a different challenge. Now we're not asking you to completely let us off the hook. That's okay, but understand what we do. Vice versa, our role is to remember that you as parents have not only the right, but by golly, the obligation to advocate for your child. And in your world, that's all that matters. I use this example a lot when I talk to teachers who are becoming administrators. You and I could be great neighbors, right? And we occasionally have dinner together. We might share a beer or two and, play cards every now and again. But when it comes right down to it, I don't care about your kids. I care about my kids and my tax dollars. That's my job. So that whole kind of dynamic has been magnified 1,000%. What used to be kind of minor little infractions that we could, just kind of help and help people understand, become mountainous things. And then, of course, this year we're dealing with the politics of mandates and how a health crisis became a political issue. That's a conversation for several beers, perhaps. I'm not sure, but
right.
But that makes it, and again, from a distance, taking a step back, I can understand everything everybody's saying. I get where you're coming from. Now, let us please run this school district. It has nothing to do with us. We don't have a choice. And the people who think that we do have a choice, we have lawyers who tell us we don't. And when you, again, as big as us, you start to look at things like the fact that you're going to lose tens of millions of dollars if you push too hard against this. That becomes a real thing, because then I can't help your kids. Right. So there's a lot of that. The other thing that has, I think, significantly changed, which will be a positive, although some kids won't think so. I'm telling you, come wintertime when we no longer have snow days,
right.
Okay, we were moving towards remote learning anyway. Now we have it. So be careful. The old rule, be careful what you ask for, yep. Because now we've got it.
Absolutely.
2 weeks ago when the village of Plainfield had a water issue, and we very quickly had to turn on a dime and shut down half of our buildings that get water from Plainfield. Yeah. We didn't close school. We're not going to tack that day on to the end of May like we would have in the past.
Right.
Kids, you got your laptops at home. You're learning on the computer today.
Yeah.
So that's a significant change. But to balance that, we've also learned, during that remote learning period, that remote learning is great for 1 or 2 snow days, for a day here or there. And Dr. Averill said it, and I give him 100% credit. He said this at the beginning. It is not good for kids for extended periods of time, weeks, much less months, because kids lose the socialization aspect, and that is incredibly important, most especially for adolescents and for teenagers.
Absolutely.
Kids need to be with a trusted adult and with their other friends and so forth. That's a vital part of growing up, and you lose that if you're just stuck behind the computer. So there's a balance. So, those people who said, we don't need teachers anymore, we don't need schools anymore, of course we do. Of course we do, because that's where kids come together and learn how to function in groups and as a part of a larger culture, a larger society.
Could not agree with you more.
Yeah.
As I was talking to you before we hit record on the videos, my daughter had her kindergarten year through remote learning because of what 2020 was. In 2021, when I walked my daughter for first grade to the bus stop for the first time. It was an incredible dad moment. It was an incredible moment that I'll remember forever, just having her get on that bus. And it was a proud moment to be a part of District 202. That to your point, things were moving forward, and the leadership was doing everything they could to keep things moving forward. That's a moment I'll never forget for my whole life.
And not always perfect. I mean, nobody is claiming that everything has been perfect.
Absolutely.
And I would say, I hope that this is an obvious statement, but nothing ever can be.
Right.
And again, no excuse. There's a difference between excuse and explain.
Yeah.
No excuse, but by way of explanation, keeping in mind just the normal factors, the normal challenges. This water thing would have happened anyway, right? With or without a pandemic. A few years ago, we had to close school, not during winter, but like in the fall, because we had heavy rains and the river overflowed its banks. So that meant that cars couldn't get out of their driveways. That's a normal thing. That's a challenge that you deal with, right? Then you put on top of that everything else that we've had to deal with and try to figure out. And it's really amazing.
Yeah.
I am so proud of the people that I work with, and frankly, of our families. It has been unbelievably challenging, and we know that some people have, criticized, and that's that. God bless America. That's your right. Until somebody says different, you have a right to speak your mind and to participate in the system and participate in the process. I've said forever, the very worst thing that you can do is just sit around your kitchen table and complain.
That's right.
Because if that's all you're doing, then you shouldn't even have a voice.
Right.
If you're not committed enough to your perspective to come to a meeting or simply email. You don't even have to come anymore. Just email and share your thoughts.
Yeah.
So we honor that. We welcome that, because that's what we get in America. Thank goodness.
Yeah,
right.
Absolutely.
And you have to with the understanding that at some point there's only so much we can do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I want to read something to you real quick here, and then I have a follow-up question on it. Gray skies brighten, heavy loads lighten, rough roads smooth out, if only for a little while. That's an excerpt from your 5th published book, the weekly fruit and vegetable report, Tales and Tidbits from a New Grandpa. Yeah. My question for you, Tom, is how has entering this new season of life as a new grandpa changed your perspective on your purpose and on your life's work?
Well, she's 3.5, Riley Jean Williams. She's my she's my best buddy, and we have her every weekend. Our daughter works at the Lockport Library, and so we have her every Saturday, and sometimes tomorrow we're getting her tomorrow. And it's interesting, I'll tell you, because when I was a dad, I worked in Chicago, I worked in St. Charles, lived here. So I was gone much of the time that my daughters were growing up. In fact, when I came to work here in Plainfield, the first day of my work was a Wednesday, and we had board committee meetings that night. Came to work, kind of found my desk, figured out where the washroom was, like that, and then went home and came back for the evening. But I went home and had dinner with my wife and my daughters. And I got home that night, and my wife said, "The girls cried after you left." I thought, "Oh my God, what did I do now? I can't win. I've screwed something up." And she said, "No, they cried because they were happy. We haven't seen you and had dinner with you in 10 years."
Wow.
So now my wife will, Riley will do something, and she'll say to me, "Do you remember when Emma or Olivia did?" And I'm like, "No, I don't." So what it has done for me, what it has meant for me, is I get a chance to have those experiences again, and in a lot of cases it's the first time for me, and I'm sure a lot of parents have that same experience now, but it's magical. It is so energizing. Let me tell you, I'm exhausted. By the time we take her home on Saturday, I'm just dead dog tired, but it's the best kind of tired, I'm a middle-aged man, and she runs me ragged. Loves to play hide and seek, but doesn't quite get the concept of it. So she'll go, "Okay, Papa, you hide over there." Okay, for the 9 millionth time, No, I just love it. It's and she just started preschool. So, speaking of school, so it's exciting for me to see her be excited about school.
Yeah.
And in a very, very small way, I can take a sliver of credit for that because we made school a good thing for our kids. School was always, it's a great thing. It wasn't a work. It wasn't a chore. I mean, they went through their teenage period, but, and now my my son-in-law are passing that along to my granddaughter. It's just awesome.
Just a beautiful response, Tom. There's so many thankless jobs out there, and one of the reasons we're so excited to have you on the show is because we feel that a lot of times that goes your way. However, when we put this program together and we put this idea out there to nominate real community heroes, I want to tell you live on the recording that there were so many parents that nominated you to be on here, and I want you to know that. In thinking of that. When you think of your time with District 202 and maybe just your life's work in totality, what's the thing that comes to mind first as far as your impact on the community?
Well, I hope it's good. I'm very flattered and very humbled. A wise person knows his strengths and his weaknesses, and I know my weaknesses. Partly just from living them, but also because I have a wonderful wife who reminds me occasionally.
Me too.
Yeah. You're good, but you're not everything you think you are.
That's right.
And we've been at that for 36 years now.
God bless.
And so I hope that in totality, I've been able to help people understand, to entertain a little bit, to inform, to engage, again, to be a connection. We live in an incredibly complicated and oftentimes difficult and frustrating world. So to have, I hope that I've kind of served the function for people to be somebody who can maybe help a little bit unravel some of that. And that goes back to my days as a reporter, trying to, I used to say I never, ever, ever, ever wanted to be anything besides a reporter, a newspaper reporter. And I was. And when the opportunity came to kind of make this life switch about 25 years ago now, it's been 25 years, I thought, in reporting, in journalism, we always kind of looked down on PR people. They were the dark side. But then I thought, no, I'm doing the same thing now that I was doing then, just from a different end of the conversation, And so I hope that that's been my contribution, is to try to kind of be a point of contact for people.
Phenomenal perspective. Husband, father, grandpa, son, brother, writer, and real community hero. Tom, on behalf of the entire Plainfield community, we cannot be more thankful for you being who you are and being a real community hero. In closing of this interview, we'd like to ask you, who's your hero?
I got this question as part of the prep list, for questions, and I guess I would say my wife is my hero. I always joke that I'm surrounded by strong women who boss me around. My wife, my daughters, my granddaughter, my dog, but my wife is my rock. In those times when she's had to kind of pull me back in, she's, by golly, she's always right. I hate to admit it. Hopefully she won't hear this, but she's always right, and she's made me a better person. And I've said in a couple of acknowledgments, she's the one who makes everything right.
Love it. Great answer, Tom. Thank you so much for being a part of this show.
Thank you.
And thank you to our audience for watching another episode of Not Your Average Joe, powered by Mortgage Message. We'll see you next week, everyone. Take care.
Hi there. My name is Tom Hernandez. I'm the Director of Community Relations for District 202 in Plainfield, and I was just a guest on the Not Your Average Joe show. If you know of any community heroes for the program, please contact the hosts.